The desert didn't forgive. It swallowed men whole, ground their bones down to dust, and left nothing but whispers in the wind. Jedediah Kane knew that truth well enough. Folks around Dodge and the rail towns called him Lone Kane, and not without reason. He didn't belong to any posse or outfit, didn't keep ties worth cutting. His horse was his only partner, a dapple-gray Mustang named Ghost. Together they cut across the emptiness, keeping to no trail, answering to no law but the one Kane kept in his chest. That was why, when he heard the sound, he almost didn't trust it. It wasn't the whistle of the wind through sagebrush or the far-off screech of a hawk. This sound was softer, strained, human. A cry. Kane drew Ghost to a halt. The sun was falling hard across the desert, bleeding crimson and orange. His hat brim shielded his eyes, but he could see nothing but rocks, scrub, and sand. Still, the sound came again. A ragged gasp. A woman's voice, cracked and dry. He nudged Ghost forward, hand hovering over the worn grip of his Colt. And then he saw her. A lone wooden post stood in the middle of the flat, weather-bleached and scarred. Tied to it with rough rope was a woman. Her head hung forward, hair black and tangled, sticking to the sweat on her face. Her arms were bound cruelly high, her wrists raw and bloody from struggle. Her skin glowed copper in the last light, and the swell of her belly beneath the torn fabric of her dress left no doubt. She was with child. For a long moment, Kane simply stared. Whoever had left her here hadn't intended mercy. This was no outlaw's quick hanging. This was punishment meant to drag on until heat and thirst took her life, and the life she carried. Kane swung out of the saddle, boots crunching sand. The woman stirred, lifting her head just enough for her eyes to catch his. Dark, defiant eyes, the kind that spoke of suffering but not surrender. Her lips cracked as she tried to speak. "Leave me. Go." Kane crouched near her, pulling the hunting knife from his belt. His voice came low, steady. "Easy. I ain't the one who tied you." He saw the way she flinched when he raised the knife, but then the ropes fell slack. Her body crumpled forward, and he caught her before she hit the ground. She was light, trembling with fever. He could feel the sharp tremor in her muscles, the heat burning through her skin. "They'll kill you," she whispered. "If you take me." "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried," Kane muttered. He scooped her up, carried her to Ghost, and lifted her carefully into the saddle. The desert stretched endless in every direction, but Kane knew a spring a few hours north. He mounted up behind her, steadying her against his chest. As they rode, she drifted in and out of consciousness. Once she murmured a word, "Anoki." Kane realized it was her name. Cherokee. He didn't ask more. There would be time for stories if she lived. By midnight they reached the spring. A trickle of water seeped from the canyon rock, forming a shallow pool where mesquite grew stubbornly. Kane set Anoki down, pressed water to her lips, and watched her drink in desperate gulps. He tore strips of cloth from his own shirt to bind her wrists and laid her near the fire he built. She slept, though fitfully. And Kane sat awake, hat brim low, eyes fixed on the shadows. He knew enough about punishment posts. He'd seen Mex outlaws tied for buzzards, seen settlers leave Apaches to die under the sun. But for a pregnant woman? That cut deeper. At dawn, the answer came in gunfire. The first shot cracked against the rocks near Kane's boot. Ghost snorted and danced sideways. Kane rolled, dragging his Colt free. From the ridge above, 3 riders appeared, silhouetted against the rising sun. One called down in a voice full of scorn, "Step away from her, cowboy. That woman's marked for death. You've no right to cut her loose." Kane stayed low, his revolver ready. "Don't see much justice in leavin' her to die slow." The leader laughed, but it wasn't a sound of humor. "You wouldn't understand. She betrayed her people. Took up with a white trader, carried his seed. She's cursed. Our council marked her for the pillar. We only carried it out." Kane's jaw tightened. He looked at Anoki, still weak, her eyes just open enough to meet his. Shame flickered there, but also rage. The leader's voice carried again. "Hand her over, and we might let you ride away. Protect her, and you'll be buried with her. Kane's breath slowed. His mind ticked through the odds, 3 rifles against 1 revolver. He could turn her over, ride on, leave this mess behind. But then he looked at her wrists, raw and bleeding. Looked at her belly, swollen with life that hadn't asked for any of this. His hand steadied on the Colt. "You'll have to come take her," Kane called back. The riders spurred their mounts downslope. The canyon erupted in violence. Kane fired first, dropping one clean off his horse. The man hit the dirt hard, his rifle clattering beside him. The second rider shouted, swerving his horse for cover. The third came barreling straight at Kane with a tomahawk raised high. Kane waited until the last moment. The tomahawk flashed, the horse thundered, and Kane's Colt barked once more. The rider toppled backward, weapon spinning from his hand. The last man fired wildly from cover, shots sparking off stone. Kane rolled, took aim, and squeezed the trigger. The rifleman screamed, fell silent. Dust settled. The canyon stank of blood and powder. Kane rose slowly, Colt smoking. Anoki stared at him, eyes wide. "You've killed sons of the Wolf Clan," she whispered. Her voice trembled, not from fear of him, but of what would come. "Their kin will not stop. They will hunt us." Kane holstered his Colt, jaw hard. "Wouldn't be the first time someone wanted me dead." He crouched beside her, checked her pulse, her breath. She was weak, but alive. The desert wind howled through the canyon like a warning. Kane knew it in his bones. This wasn't the end of it. Blood had been spilled, and blood always called for more. But for now, she was safe. For now. The bodies lay still in the sand, their blood drying black beneath the morning sun. Kane didn't bury them. He knew better. A shallow grave wouldn't stop the wolves from sniffing out their own kin. And Anoki's warning echoed in his skull, "They will hunt us." He loaded her back into the saddle, her weight sagging against him, and spurred Ghost westward. Every mile put more dust between them and the Wolf Clan's vengeance, but Kane knew distance was only time. The desert was wide, but news traveled faster than a bullet. For 3 days they rode hard, sleeping little, stopping only at hidden springs or rock shelters. Anoki grew stronger on what scraps of jerky and sips of water Kane could spare, but she was heavy with child now. Her steps were slower when he set her down to rest. Her face, though still proud, was pale from strain. On the 3rd night, as Kane tended a fire beneath a mesquite grove, she finally spoke more than fragments. "My people," she said quietly, eyes fixed on the flames. "They named me Anoki because I pretended. I pretended to be loyal, to follow their ways. But I strayed. I let my heart betray me." Kane poured water into a tin cup and handed it to her. "The traitor!" She nodded. "He came with silver, whiskey, and stories. Promised to take me far, beyond the Smoky Mountains. Promised I'd never bow to the council again. But when my belly grew, he left me in the night. The council saw my shame. They judged me unclean. My uncle tied me to the pillar with his own hands." Her voice broke. She pressed her palms to her stomach. "My child has no people, no clan." Kane stared into the fire. He thought of his own youth, of a family slaughtered by raiders, of years spent drifting from war to war until he had no home, no name worth answering to. "Then he'll have to make his own way," Kane said at last. "Same as I did." Anoki's gaze lifted to him, searching his face. "Why help me, cowboy? You could have left me to the buzzards." Kane didn't answer right away. He thought of a battlefield years ago, a brother in arms begging for help while Kane ran with the rest, saving his own skin. That face still haunted his dreams. "Because someone should have helped me once," Kane said finally. "And they didn't." The next dawn, Kane found tracks in the dust not far from camp. Fresh hoofprints, many of them. "They're close," he muttered. Anoki's jaw tightened. She said nothing, but her hand went to her belly as if shielding the child from what was coming. They broke camp quickly and rode deeper into canyon country, where stone walls pressed close and shadows offered cover. But cover worked both ways. By noon, Kane heard the whistle of an arrow. He yanked Anoki down from Ghost as it thudded into the dirt where she had been. Another arrow hissed, then another. Figures moved along the ridge, half a dozen warriors at least. The Wolf clan had found them. Cain shoved Anoki behind a boulder, Colt already in his hand. He fired upward, the shots echoing loud against the stone, sending the riders ducking for cover. But they were smart, spreading wide, circling like coyotes. One darted down the slope with a spear leveled. Cain dropped him with a bullet through the chest. Another came from the opposite side, firing a musket. The ball grazed Cain's arm, tearing fabric and skin. He gritted his teeth and fired back. Through the smoke, Cain saw Anoki clutching her stomach, eyes wide with panic. Not from fear of death, Cain recognized that look. It was labor. Not now, Cain growled under his breath. The fight turned desperate. He counted his shots. 2 left. The clan was too many. Then, from the ridgeline, a deep voice thundered, "Enough!" The warriors froze. Cain, panting, bleeding, kept his Colt aimed but waited. A man stepped forward from the shadows. He was older, broad-shouldered, with gray streaking his black hair and scars down both arms. His chest bore painted symbols of the Wolf clan. His eyes burned like coals fixed on Anoki. Her breath caught. "Uncle." Cain stiffened. This was the man who had tied her to the pillar. The elder raised a hand. The other warriors held back, their bows lowered. "You shame us again, Anoki," the man said in a voice like gravel. "The council marked you for death. Yet here you are, crawling the desert with a white man." His eyes shifted to Cain, full of contempt. "Cowboy, you spill Cherokee blood for a woman not your kin. That blood will drown you." Cain wiped the sweat and dust from his brow, Colt steady in his grip. "Then drown me now, old man. Or turn your back and let her live." The elder's gaze cut to Anoki, then to her swollen belly. "That child carries no name, no clan. It will curse our bloodline if it breathes. Step aside, and we end this now." Anoki cried out, clutching her stomach as another contraction shook her. Cain shifted, shielding her with his body. "You want her, you'll have to put me down first." The canyon went silent. The elder studied Cain, his jaw working. At last he raised a hand again. "Not here," he said. "Not now. We'll take you both alive. Let the council decide your fate. Tie them." The warriors began moving forward, ropes in hand. Cain's Colt was empty. He knew it. They knew it. His mind raced. If they took him and Anoki alive, the council's judgment would be death for both mother and child. There would be no bargaining, no second chance. And Anoki was going into labor, right there in the dirt. Cain reached for his knife, ready to sell his life dear. But before he could rise, Ghost reared with a shrill cry, spooking the warriors closest to him. Dust and hooves churned, arrows flying wild. Cain grabbed Anoki's arm. "Run!" They stumbled through the canyon floor, Cain dragging her as best he could while she clutched her belly in agony. Behind them, shouts rang out, arrows snapping past. A narrow cleft opened ahead between 2 rocks. Cain shoved Anoki through just as a spear whistled past his ear. The cleft twisted into a hidden ravine. They scrambled down, sliding on loose gravel, until they reached the shadowed bottom. Cain pulled her into a hollow beneath an overhang, chest heaving. Above, the Wolf clan voices echoed, searching, angry. But the ravine swallowed sound and sight. For now, they were hidden. But Anoki was on the ground, gasping, sweat pouring from her face. Her hands gripped her belly, her cries muffled against the stone. Cain knelt beside her, fear gnawing his gut. He'd seen men die of wounds, seen children starve, but he'd never faced this. "Easy," he said, though his own voice shook. "Hold on. You're safe now." Anoki's eyes burned into his. "No, Cain. He's coming. The child is coming now." Her scream split the canyon. And above, the warriors heard. Anoki's scream tore through the ravine, echoing against the rock walls like a war cry. Cain winced. Every warrior on the ridge above would have heard it. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling his knife free. His Colt was empty, his rifle lost back in the canyon. All he had now was cold steel and stubborn grit. Anoki clawed at the dirt, her body shaking as contractions racked her. "He's coming," she gasped. Sweat poured down her temples, her dark hair plastered to her cheeks. Cain crouched beside her, torn between two terrors, the child forcing its way into the world, and the warriors closing in. Above, voices shouted in Cherokee. Boots and hooves pounded stone. Cain leaned close to her ear. "You hold on, you hear me? You hold on. I'll keep 'em off." But Anoki seized his arm, her eyes blazing even through the pain. "No, Cain. You stay. The child comes. You do not leave me." The words struck harder than a bullet. Cain froze, knife still in hand. For the first time in years, he felt helpless. The first arrow clattered down into the ravine, sparking against stone. Another followed, hissing past Cain's shoulder. The wolf clan had found their path. Cain swore under his breath, then dragged Anoki behind the overhang, tucking her into the shadow. He crouched in front, knife ready, the only barrier between her and death. A figure dropped into the ravine, one of the younger warriors, face painted, tomahawk gleaming. His eyes burned with hate when they landed on Cain. The boy shouted and charged. Cain met him head-on, steel against steel. The tomahawk rang off the blade, sparks spitting. Cain drove his shoulder forward, ramming the boy into stone, then plunged the knife deep. Warm blood sprayed his hands. The warrior crumpled. More shadows moved above. Cain ripped the blade free, chest heaving. Behind him, Anoki cried out again, voice raw. "Cain! He's coming!" Cain spun, his heart pounding harder than the drums of war. He dropped the knife, tore strips from his shirt, and knelt beside her. He'd never done this, had no right to know, but there was no one else. Her hand crushed his wrist with surprising strength. "Do not let them take him," she gasped. "I won't," Cain said, voice low, fierce. "I swear it." The child came into the world amidst screams and steel. Cain's rough hands caught him as Anoki sobbed with pain and relief. A boy, slick with blood, his tiny fists clenched, lungs wailing into the desert air. Cain wrapped him in the remnants of his coat, staring at the fragile, furious little face. Something in his chest shifted, something long dead stirring awake. But there was no time to dwell. The warriors were dropping down into the ravine now, 2, 3 at a time. Their uncle among them, broad-shouldered, eyes blazing. He saw the child and roared like a beast. "That thing will not breathe our air." Cain rose, revolver useless in his holster, bloodied knife in his fist. He squared his shoulders, child cradled against his chest with one arm, blade in the other. "Over my dead body," he growled. The fight was chaos. Cain slashed, stabbed, swung, all while shielding the wailing newborn against his chest. The warriors pressed him hard, their blades flashing in the firelight. Cain's knife sank into one man's throat, then tore free to parry another's strike. But he was only one man. A blow cracked across his ribs, sending him sprawling. The baby screamed louder, Cain curling around him. The uncle stepped forward, towering, spear leveled at Cain's heart. "Now it ends." Cain spat blood, rising to one knee. He tightened his grip on the knife. "Do it, then. But you'll have to look this child in the eyes when you kill him." The old man hesitated. For the briefest moment, the baby's cries echoed through the ravine like judgment itself. And in that moment of pause, Anoki moved. She dragged herself from the shadows, her face white with exhaustion but her eyes blazing. With the last strength in her body, she seized a fallen tomahawk and hurled it. It struck her uncle square in the chest. His eyes went wide. He staggered, dropped the spear, and fell to his knees before collapsing. The other warriors froze. Their leader lay dead at the hands of the woman they had condemned. Anoki swayed, collapsing against the stone, her chest heaving. Cain rose fully now, knife still in hand, his voice cutting through the silence. Any man who still wants this child can step forward. But he'll meet the same end as your chief." The warriors' eyes darted between the dead body of their uncle and the cowboy standing over the child. One by one, they stepped back. Then, without a word, they melted into the shadows of the ravine and were gone. The silence after was heavier than any gunshot. Cain dropped the knife and sank beside Enoki. She was pale, her breath shallow. He pressed the baby into her arms, but her hands trembled too much to hold him. Her eyes found Cain's, soft now, no longer defiant. "He lives," she whispered. "You kept your word." "Rest now," Cain murmured, brushing the hair from her damp forehead. But she shook her head weakly. "No rest. Not for me. Only for him." Her hand touched the baby's cheek, lingered a moment, then fell limp. Cain felt her last breath leave her chest. The fire crackled low, the baby's cries the only sound left in the ravine. Dawn came slow, painting the desert gold. Cain dug with his bare hands, carving a shallow grave in the stony earth. He laid Enoki down gently, her dark hair spread like wings, her face at peace for the first time since he'd found her. He marked the spot with a cairn of stones, whispering words he hadn't prayed in years. Then he turned to the child. The boy lay wrapped in Cain's coat, eyes closed, his breath soft and steady. Cain stared at him, feeling the weight of a vow he hadn't known he'd make. He could have left him. Could have ridden off into the desert, back to the drifting life he'd always known. But he didn't. He lifted the child into his arms, mounted Ghost, and looked westward. The wolf clan might come again. The desert might try to claim them both. But Cain knew this much. He would not run anymore. Not for himself. Not for the boy. "Your name's Red Hawk," Cain said softly into the wind, voice rough. "And as long as I breathe, nobody will take you." Ghost pawed the earth, ready. Cain nudged him forward, the baby swaddled close to his chest. The desert opened wide before them. Harsh, merciless, but also alive with possibility. The lone cowboy rode on, carrying not just a child but a future he hadn't dared to believe in. And behind them, in the silence of the canyon, the cairn of stones stood, testament to a Cherokee woman who refused to die without a fight.